Welcome back. Thank you. Good to see you.
Just like you never run.
We just switched sides.
Yeah, you know, he's on the other side, yeah.
Came over to the good side.
Did I see brownies?
So Tom, did you make it to bowling or?
Chocolate
Did you
chip
find
I
a
did not have a
substitute?
doctor's appointment, you were gonna be my pitch hitter.
Sarah.
Jeff was out sick, Mike was not here.
Yeah.
We
So
tried.
Bowling went unfulfilled?
Yeah,
Oh, man.
Staff went.
yep, Steph was there.
Bowling?
I tried Todd Lisi, he couldn't go. I tried Chuck, he couldn't go.
I was busy. Unfortunately, I wanted to go. That was fun.
I like to go, it's fun to go.
Hello, hello.
Yeah. They always put me with somebody that's with the kids that's really good, so you just have to stick up the
Ride on
joints.
their coattails.
Yeah.
Hey there.
I gotta wait for it to get cold to wear it.
Oh, okay.
Julie, how's it feel to sit out there?
Very weird. Oh, come on, for
Oh, yeah, what are you doing?
Wow.
real? There's only 2 coat hangers.
You know what, you take that black jacket on the left and throw it right on the ground.
I'll hang it up.
Because that's mine, you can just chuck it on the ground.
We're gonna need a little more over here. Add it to the list.
As a matter of fact, I think there are more hangers in that back closet.
Probably loud.
Yeah, I did.
Put it in the budget, the 20,000 next year.
Next phase is coat hangers
Right. For what?
for tomorrow night for facility.
He's asking us.
Yes, not a very short meeting. We will find them a home. No doubt. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna make the girls left them up in school.
We never finalized that.
Hannah's always coming loaded. She's got her suit and her stuff.
Well,
Yeah. She would know you had it. I feel like she should have
Just hold it right again.
It's really my new seat for the-
Radio flyer.
We do have a radio for her. When we were kids. So Casey would be on it. He's gonna be
Wednesday.
It's like you're exposed.
I looked almost there.
We're closed here.
Verizon.
You can feel the anticipation in the air.
I'm a baby.
Just like a SpaceX launch.
That's right. All right, I got 6:30, so I'm gonna call our meeting to order. And I think our first order of business is our public hearing.
It is. Welcome, everyone. As we do each year, we kick off budget season with an overview of the budget process and just some information, factual information for everybody. So Mike and I will run through that with you now. This is really the slide that talks about our approach. In a nutshell, we go to great lengths not to guess or try to give you information that we don't know about. We have found in the past that if we give information that's not 100% locked in, it creates unnecessary anxiety. So what we like to do is work through our Budget and Finance Committee as information becomes available, and then bring it to the full board and share what we know instead of what we think we know. And that process has worked real well for us, and we'll continue to do that this year. It's also important to look at what we do and what we're really here for. And this has always been a popular slide through the years, and that is a percentage feel for what it is that we use our budget dollars for. We're a people business, obviously staff and students first and foremost, and we're happy each year to report to the board that just under 80% of our total budget goes to instruction or instructional related items. You would think that would be a pretty common thing across school districts, but it's not a given. But in Homer, we've always been able to concentrate the bulk of our efforts on the instruction and the health and well-being of kids. In Homer, about 11% goes to general support, and that can take the form of a lot of different things. But business office functions, superintendent's office, Board of Education, that type of stuff. 7% of our budget goes for transportation. As you know, we have a very large busing district, and we have a great responsibility to not only do it, but do it well, which is a job that we take seriously. So 7% of our budget dollars this current school year, and that's pretty consistent from year to year, is on transportation. 2% for school lunch, and then the last one, it's a little bit difficult to read because we went with the purple color, but that's for debt service. That's payments made on past capital projects. So again, focus, the important takeaway from this, and we focus greatly on instruction. Here are our revenue sources from this year, and again, not everybody has a good understanding of where we get our funding sources from, but just over 50% of our budget this year came from New York State aid. The other big number is our local tax levy and STAR payments, 37%. Notice operating grants, those are federal grants from a number of different funding sources. And then the other two, we do allot 1% of our budget from reserves. And then finally, local sources, E-rate, and other miscellaneous income revenue that we use for the budget. These are the budget guidelines. We've brought them to you in the first reading, and then you'll formally adopt them tonight. But we've kept these pretty static over the years. We've made some subtle changes. But again, what we're trying to do when we build a budget is to be responsible about it and continue to make sure that we're maximizing the impact of the programs that we do have. We don't like to put programs in place that we don't feel, or we certainly don't want to maintain any that we don't feel are having the maximum impact for kids. We also want to keep our strategic plan initiatives front and center. And I do think we've done a really nice job of that since the adoption of that strategic plan 3-4 years ago. We want to make sure that we listen to the community and that we try to reflect the programs and the offerings reflect what our community values, so that when our children walk out of here, they have choices for whatever they want to do next. We obviously want to follow the law. That's always an important thing to do. So we try to maintain compliance with the tax levy limit and the tax levy process. And then this is not as big of an issue now, but there's some uncertainty, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few slides. In the past, we've had federal or state monies that have been withheld from us. Now they're starting to, districts are starting to recoup that money that had been withheld in years past, but there's still some level of uncertainty of if they're going to come through on the promises that they've made. So now talking about key considerations. These are those big buckets that we have to keep in mind as we develop the budget each year. This is the federal stimulus aid. We have utilized that federal stimulus aid. We're in year 2 of that. And we have to spend all of that stimulus money by the fall of 2024. So we've gone up here, and in last school year, we utilized $1.4 million of the federal monies. This year, we're planning to spend $1.717 million, and then the remainder would be utilized, again, by the fall of 2024. And we thought it was important that we give you an idea. This is not a reading test for those of you that are furthest from it, but I won't read the entire thing, but this is a sample of some of the things that we have utilized the federal money for and continue to. Under staffing, we've talked a lot about family support liaisons. We've talked a lot about our pre-K special ed teacher, OT, speech, language, and psychologist services at the elementary school that we've really seen a nice return on the investment. We've also been running those summer enrichment and extended school day programs that will continue to run. A lot of positive impact for kids. We're really excited about some of the staffing that we've been able to utilize the monies with. Under capital improvements in a couple of places, you've got some information on your board packet tonight about the HVAC work here at HTEC. we're going to ask you to approve that bid. And that is some of the federal money that we've utilized for that, as well as we allotted $2.3 million or so that we incorporated into our larger capital project that was passed last December. Under supplies and materials, our BIMAS 2 social emotional screener, we use federal monies to purchase that. We've begun utilizing that with our kids. And at some point here, when we feel like we have some good data to share with you, we want to talk to you about the positive impact that we are finding from the utilization of that and some of the things that we've learned. Another large one that's in there is the technology purchases, the interactive boards that we've utilized. Early in COVID, we spent quite a bit of federal money on making sure that we had the cleaning supplies and the various pieces of equipment that we needed to further clean our buses and our classrooms. Finally, under purchased services, we're looking at a social emotional curriculum that we actually have gotten to the point of choosing one, and Jeff just met with a group of folks last week and talked about what the pilot program rollout for that will look like for next year. We've also tried to get our kids physically active. When we couldn't be active outside, we've utilized the Jan McDonald Center and used some of the federal funds to be able to go ahead and rent those spaces out. And then we've talked about TCI training for our staff, therapeutic crisis intervention. Some of the federal monies were used for the training and implementation of TCI in the district, which again is geared toward helping staff to be more socially or more aware of the social emotional state of our kids. So really thoughtful plan here with our federal money, and we'll talk about some of the challenges, one of which will be how do we transition what we've utilized some of the money for, how do we transition those things that we value to keep them in the budget long term. Questions about what I've talked about so far?
So does that spending window for the stimulus include the fall of 2024?
Through
So you get
2024.
a partial year in that budget cycle?
Into September, so you're gonna see that window from July to September.
Okay,
which is
to
a
match
small
up with the
window.
fiscal year?
They haven't talked yet of whether they would allow any carryover of funds. The only way I see that is that they sent out another memo today, New York State did, in regards to capital projects and whether or not people can get the capital projects done.
Right.
And they would be able to still carry over that money to be able to fulfill their obligations to pay contractors, vendors, what have you.
Yeah.
But they haven't talked about, really on the whole, if you haven't been spending the money, if you'll be able to carry it over. Another big piece of that, and I've been able to push it back to the spring of 2024, every district will go through an audit process. So in a nutshell, we showed everything that we were spending our money on. Not only will it be an audit of the spending of the funds, but actually an audit of the programming. So I tried to push and tried to see how other districts who are because it's going to start this spring. I wanted to see how it fell out for other districts.
Oh, yeah.
And
You don't want to be first.
I rolled the dice and put the last possible window to be in, and we got it, which was good. But I think a lot of us will learn, as is often the case in some of the other situations, we've been the first ones to go. So I think it's important to understand that not only are they looking at the spending of the money, they're going to audit programming, because the understanding is through state aid that will come in the future, not federal aid, state aid, is that you'll have to maintain this program. Right. So, and how you're going to do that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and we jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with foundation aid restoration, for those of you who don't know what foundation aid is based on, there's about 20 different formulas the state uses, but the key formula is based on enrollment, students that are enrolled in the district. So we'll talk as we go through the process showing that our enrollment fairly becomes static over the last 5 years. Over the last probably 15 years, we've dropped about 500 students. So that's had an effect on foundation aid. Another piece of that, when I came into the position 10 years ago, we were part of something called gap elimination. What they did, in order for the state to close their financial gap, they withheld aid from districts. For Homer, they're withholding over $2 million a year in aid from us. the point that was good for us was we were flushing reserves. So we could kind of fill those gaps with reserves, but we pulled down our amount of reserves over a good 5-year span before they stopped the elimination. They didn't give us all the money back that they withheld, they just stopped taking it. So that was a big piece of that. Where we're at now is during that time as well, in that formula, they froze pieces of that formula. So when we were faced with the charter school coming in, there was a charter school aid that we were supposed to receive back to the district. Because that happened after the freeze, we're still waiting to receive some of that aid. So there are other pieces of that aid formula, and now the state is saying, we're going to slowly restore. Now their idea of restoration is to say that they owe us, say, $1 million. So last year, they provided us with $538,400 of that million to make us whole. However, if you go back and run that formula, even back 10 years, they owe us probably 6 or 7 times that amount. So again, when we're looking at this restoration, that's one of the factors that we're looking at, because when the federal money goes away, and for 23-24, again, looking at that budget that we're going to put together, we're going to factor in, are they going to make us whole at another $500,000, or are they going to run the formulas? And by that, are they going to open up some of these areas that they've frozen and provide us more? So that's a piece of it too, as we're looking to have to keep programming that, are they going to run the formulas for districts across the state, 700 districts across the state, to be able to fund those pieces of the puzzle. So restoration here means 2 different things. Are they going to restore at our now level with things that are frozen, or are they going to open the funding levels wide open again and really restore people back to where they need to be? So that's going to be something that we're going to monitor as we go through the process. As Mr. Turk had said in the first slide, that's why we don't want to throw out our thoughts on it or what we think they're going to do. We should, by the end of this month, have a state aid run from the governor's office. So that gives us our first look at revenues going forward. Another piece of this that we're looking at as far as aid restoration or other means of revenue for programming, we had talked last year, Mr. Moore in the special ed department and working with the pieces of the new pre-K. So we talked about OT, PT, special education, psychologists. We've been able to go ahead and bill the 4 counties that we work with. The counties are so short on staff that they can't fulfill their obligations to our students. What we've turned around and done, and again, Mr. Moore has reached out to the counties, and we've signed contracts. Now we've become the providers of service. So the counties are paying us for the service we're providing for our children. That will create a revenue to help offset that gap for the new positions that we put there. So that's one of the pieces of the puzzle that we're looking at financially. Since Chris really spearheaded that, we've had several districts reach out to us to see how we did that, and the process is quite cumbersome, and we have to file the applications every year. Any questions on foundation aid? Emily?
A couple. So, for the first part, approximately when will you know which we're dealing with, or which we have to work with?
So, at the end of the month, the governor will send out, they do every year, that aid, and then what'll happen from that is that then there's a legislative run that comes out in March prior to the budget. Historically, the legislative run has been higher than the governor's run, but last year they were very close. There wasn't much difference there. So that gives us our revenue, or our idea of revenue. But again, they're estimating revenue because the revenue that they tell us is never the actual amount that comes in the following year. It's close, but there are different factors in that that affect, again, that 20-piece formula. If there's one change to it, a few years back we had an individual in the district win the lottery. That in itself for 1 year affected our aid ratio for high cost aid. because it took the average household income and jacked it by the amount that the person won, and it was just for 1 year.
That's why I don't buy a lot of.
Yeah, so,
Trying to help everybody out.
I suggest that if people win the lottery, that they could go to, no, I'm kidding, to another area to claim it.
I'll make a large
I
donation.
was saying, we accept large donations.
So, but that, again, that's a factor, that was a 1-year factor, and we realized that factor last year, but the increase had happened 5 years ago. So it's just how it ebbs and flows. So with our revenues, and we'll share that with budget and finance and with the whole board once those figures come in. Because that's when we really start to build the budget, rather than putting our thoughts up there and then there being quite a large gap. So.
My other question was, the second part, what is the percentage difference or the gap, if you will, between what we're generating for revenue for providing those services and the actual cost of having the individuals here?
So last
How much of
year,
it are we actually having covered?
last year, we got started late in the year. I can answer that question better for you in another month or so, because they're still behind. So we're billing and now receiving for
Yeah.
the first quarter of the year. So we can build an
You have an
estimate.
estimate though.
I'm gonna say maybe it covers 2 positions out of the 4.
Okay, so about 50%, okay.
Yeah.
Which in the first years
That's
is outstanding,
a
right?
lot better than what I was thinking, so that's
Yeah,
good.
so that's my estimate now, because there are some other pieces of the billing that then come through, through Medicaid, so that's a part of the billing too. So we'll have to look at both pieces of that.
Is there any buzz out of Albany that the budget will be on time and or that there's political momentum in running the foundation aid formula correctly into the future?
I haven't heard much of anything. My organization hasn't been saying anything.
No.
I haven't seen anything come across my desk yet.
The governor spoke a few weeks ago and said there's an increase to education, but what that means and what that means for
Right.
individual districts, they haven't pinpointed that. But we should know in another week or so.
Yeah.
If not, we'll have 11 contingencies like we always do.
Yes, exactly.
Correct. So the next piece, and I know this is everyone's favorite part, but just to do a preemptive, is the tax levy limit.
We don't have the video.
I wait till February to show that.
Yeah, I know.
Video.
But again, they call it that 2% levy limit or tax cap, which really isn't 2%. It's based on the CPI. Right now, the CPI is what, a little under 7 at that point as a multiplier and a formula. So when we get into this, for those who are new or new to the budget process in the audience, that's a multiplier used in a very complex formula. If you want to take a look, our current actual tax levy is at $17,027,266. Our levy limit, the amount that you can go out to the taxpayers, so your levy limit, you can ask for without having to have a supermajority. So that's over 66% of the vote. All you would have to need is a normal majority, 50% plus 1 to pass your budget. So the tax levy limit that we could have gone out at is $17,679,744. So you have that gap, it's a 3.8% increase. The estimated levy limit, and again, when you see this formula, I'm waiting on one piece of the formula. My estimate right now would be that the district could go out for the 23-24 budget at $17,760,578. That's the limit. Do you have to do that? No. That's just the limit by law that you can go out at. We have not, over the last 10 years, we have increased taxes on average per year under 1%. That 1% is, if you factor everything in, about $160,000. So with that, again, these are decisions that we'll have to make based on state aid, where we want to tax at, and again, use of that federal money. The issue here, the reason why it went up, so the ability to use more was again a factor, because when we don't go out this year at 17.6 million, you're allowed to carry over a portion of the money to add that to your total the next year. It's not the entire amount. So I couldn't go ahead and say, we're gonna add that 3.83% plus the factor, that 2% multiplier. The state doesn't allow you to do that. They allow you to go out and say you can use 15% of what you didn't use as a carryover. So we'll look at that again. I don't want to spoil it for February with the great
Yeah,
video.
that's right.
So any questions here on the tax levy or tax cap? So some of the things that we're looking at as we develop the budget, again, contractual costs. We have contracts through our bargaining units, as well as terms and conditions with those folks who do not have for salary increases. Benefits, health and dental increase anywhere from 6 to 8% per year. In talking with one of our folks, Mr. Turk and I had met with them prior to Christmas, we're looking at probably a 6% increase. And looking at that, and again, as we go through the budget process, we'll break down every one of these benefits and areas and show you the trends with it. Staffing and retirements. So one of the reasons why we haven't had to raise the tax levy is because we've had a considerable amount of retirements over the last 6 or 7 years. The district has looked at programming, what things could we add in. So rather than taking a position, just doing away with it, we looked at what would be the breakage from an experienced teacher leaving, a new teacher coming in, and that's how we've been able to go through and fund the pre-K classes. So the start of the pre-K classes came in with a year that we had a large amount of retirements. So start to build that programming. So we'll continue to look at that. And then, really the transition from the utilization of federal stimulus funding. We're saying that once that money goes away, how are we going to make up for that in revenue? Would it be through taxes? Would it be through state aid? Would it be through alternate revenue sources, whether they be grants or things of that nature? So these are some of the pieces that we're looking at now as we put together the budget. As I said, for those of you who are new on the board and those in the audience, as we go through now weekly, we will be providing every board meeting updates. So you'll see a portion, we'll talk about contractual costs, and we'll talk about benefits, we'll talk about staffing. We'll also talk about our costs that are incurred per area, whether it be transportation, operations, and maintenance. So we'll take a deeper dive and show you where we've spent the money, the actuals, and then look to see where we're forecasting to move forward. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Does anyone from the community have a question they'd like to ask? Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
We don't have executive session,
We do not.
so I'm going to invite us to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need a motion to approve the 1:10 meeting minutes.
So move.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Well, it wasn't until recently I found out I was directing traffic tonight, so I don't have any brilliant comments to make for us. Even if I had noticed, I might not have brilliant comments. But, so I'll turn it over to Superintendent Turk for comments.
Okay, first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to welcome 2 new faces to the board. Janelle Hess, our student representative on the board, and Keith Fagerheim, who couldn't get enough of it the first time and has come back to fill out Julie McChesney's term till June. I had asked each of them to just introduce themselves, a little 30-second, 45-second elevator speech about themselves, and for us to get to know them a little bit better. So Janelle, welcome. We're excited to have you here.
Yeah, so for everyone that doesn't know me, I'm Janelle Hest. I'm a junior this year at the high school. I kind of decided that I wanted to get in this position because I've taken over a lot of leadership roles this year and last year. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here and work with all of you.
Great to have you. And one of the things that we talked about prior to Janelle being the student that stepped forward, we talked about trying to build in to her role a mechanism so that she can really be a voice of the student body to the best of her ability. So Janelle and I, we met, what was it, yesterday, I guess it was, right? We met again yesterday, and she had built a nice PowerPoint and with some of her ideas. Next step being me reaching out to the building principals, letting them know that Janelle will be reaching out to set up a meeting to talk with them about a way to build that structure in their building. So we're excited. And what I've also charged with Janelle with, and she's excited about it, is that the second meeting in each month, we'll plan for that student voice part of the meeting, whether it be Janelle reporting on something or having students here. So we'll be interested in how that evolves as we go. And lastly, before I turn it over to Keith, the other piece of what we're going to lean on Janelle for is to help us in the planning for how do we choose moving forward. How do we choose that student? What mechanism do we put in place for that? So looking forward to working with Janelle. Keith?
So I'm Keith, served on some committees before and 2 terms on the board. I have 2 sons. Andrew graduated in 2020, and lovely year that was. And Matthew's a senior this year, so glad to be able to help out again, and glad to have a student on the board too as well.
Right, and then for those of you that don't know, Keith had a very strong voice, 4 student voice on the board. So it's kind of interesting that we're coming back together at the same time. So again, good to have you back, Keith. Welcome. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that I've tentatively etched out 3 days for the board district retreat this summer. It'll be 2 of those 3 days, but I'm interested to know from the board, and you can email me. I'll send an email out tomorrow. July 24th, 25th, and 26th are the days when I could capture all the administrators. We haven't chosen a site yet, but that'll be dependent on what days it is. But I'll send an email out and get a sense of if that's a good time for people. What I am gonna ask though is that I have 1 or 2 of you volunteer to work with me to try to develop a board component, a board team building component to that. We've talked, over the last year or so about wanting to try to build those things in. So again, in that email I send to you, I'll ask for any volunteers for that as well. And then lastly, we'll stay on the budget train here. The Central New York School Boards Association is putting on a webinar called Let's Talk Budget, for those of you that haven't been able to sleep lately. It's a virtual event, so I really do think it might be useful, it says, for new board members, but it doesn't have to be. The budget process is even those folks that have been on the board for a while know it's pretty complex. The agenda for that day will be to understand the budget and from a board member's perspective, what to look for, what questions to ask, and just to educate yourself on the whole budget process. I'll send that out. It's February 9th at 5:15 to 6:15. Again, it's a virtual event. I would welcome everybody. I'm going to sit in on it as well. I think any time you can spend looking at the budgetary aspect of a district, it's a good thing to do. So I'll share that with you as well in my email. That's what I have.
Thank you. That brings us to old business, and so I'll entertain a motion for the second reading of our installment of policies.
So moved.
Second. All right, questions or comments, and if you have either of those, please share with us the policy number to which you're addressing.
I just want to clarify on page 4, it says if a community guest speaks, I've heard it said out loud to people sometimes, that they have 2 minutes, but in here it says they have 3. So I just want to clarify
Okay.
and
I'll take a look
make
at that.
note that it hasn't been consistent.
Yeah, I don't know if, do we say 2 here?
I've been one of the people.
Okay, so it should reflect that. So, yeah, that's right. So I'll make that, I think it will be fine.
I'm fine either way,
Yeah,
but
yeah, okay, thank you, good catch, Amy.
it's the third to last line.
Because on our,
Yeah, we'll find it.
on our procedures here, it says 2, so.
Yep.
Just a point of clarification on policy 5661 wellness. Does that affect our fundraisers as far as items to be ordered? Or is it strictly food items that are for sale during the school day?
Could you tell me where you are, Keith?
It's policy 5661 on wellness.
Yep.
Page, I think it begins on page 7 and continues on page 8
Of
of
13.
13.
All right, let me get there.
Toward the bottom of page 7, under fundraising, all foods and beverages available for sale to students through fundraisers on school campus during the school day, and only after the conclusion of lunch periods will meet at a minimum the smart snacks and school nutrition standards. This one,
That
I
would
mean,
be
it's that
school,
actual
yeah.
food that they have in their hands, it doesn't apply.
Right,
to
no,
food.
right. It's okay.
Can you still sell chocolate bars as a
And-
fundraiser?
And that wouldn't affect the coffee shop idea
Right.
either.
No. No.
Great.
Additional questions or comments? So what we have before us are the policies as amended to match the amount of time for the public comment. So all of those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so now we'll move to new business. So if I could have a motion to approve the report from the Committee on Preschool Education.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? Mr. Moore is ready. Seems like this round had a lot of services that we are sharing with these students, so you've been busy.
Yeah, you're gonna see.
The team's been busy.
Especially the preschool level, because we've had to work through those initial screenings and developmental working through the year, so we've seen a lot of stuff.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so now we're going to move on to a motion to receive the report from the Committee on Special Education.
So moved.
Questions or comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Now we've turned to the disposal of items from the elementary, so I need a motion to approve the disposal of those items.
So moved.
Questions or comments? Why?
I'm just curious, are they just outdated or?
Yeah, it's a
I
normal.
really understand
Yeah,
this
it's-
because they were published in 2017.
Yeah, but it's a normal practice that they go through. They identify what, not just what is out of date, but where they have an updated version of that same material, where they won't use the old one
So we
again.
get the latest and greatest about babies that can't eat kimchi. That was
You
one
would
of
be
them.
surprised how much change there is in that process, yeah.
Just, I read all of the, what in the world, somebody wrote that? That's, it became a little entertaining, but anyway.
Makes you want to start writing obscure books. doesn't it?
No,
Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? All right, then we'll move to a motion to approve the bid for the HTEC mechanical upgrade work.
So moved.
Second. Questions or comments?
Remind me the schedule on this particular project, is that pretty quick?
Yes, so after approval, our hope would be, it would be done late spring or early summer.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Motion to approve the educational data services resolution.
So move.
right, questions or comments?
This is a new thing for us? Oh, I'm sorry.
So, when we go out to do our budgeting, so the main piece of it are school supplies. We spend roughly about $179,000, $180,000 a year. Ed Data Services came into, really introduced into our area about 6, 7 years ago. What they are is they are a clearinghouse for bidding. So when we buy in the purchasing process, anything that we purchase over $2,000, we either have to have 3 quotes, or it has to be under a municipal bid or a state contract. So that really limits our purchasing. So when we go out and look to purchase through the district, we use School Specialty as one of our big school supply providers, along with most of New York State, because they're under state contract. And they win the contracts, it's easier for us to procure the items. We do receive a good price on that, but it limits staff of where they can purchase from. Again, with our business department, I have one individual who works on procurement, and then building secretaries, when the items come in, check in, and then we have to go against that before we sign off on a claim to purchase these items. Using Ed Data Services, what they have done is provided themselves to be a clearinghouse with supplies and materials in 20 different areas. They go out and do all the bidding. They go out and set up all the contracts. So then what it allows a district to do is then go ahead and, rather than saying to a principal, okay, allot your staff member $200 to purchase from School Specialty, now they would have 7, 8, 10 areas where they can go and purchase items that may be more so, number one, what they want, and number two, because of the competition involved there, the prices may be significantly lower, even lower through this clearinghouse than we would actually get them through School Specialty. So looking at our athletic bids, looking at bids through the nurse's office, general supplies, you know, one of the pieces that, and looking at this, Adidas, that to purchase items, if you wanted equipment or apparel through Adidas, through this, they've actually worked out the bid. There's a state bid, and then Adidas came back and offered an additional 30%. Not that I'm advocating purchasing through them, but as an example, it's another 30% off, which drives the cost way down. The other key piece of this is that their software works directly with our accounting system. So not only prior, when somebody orders 200 things or small items from School Specialty, when we generate a PO for that, we have to list all those items on there. So not only are you putting in an order, but you have to list them on the PO. Educational Data Services, their software talks directly to our software programs. So when somebody does a purchase, it creates a PO, already has the information logged on there, and it does it per area or per business of where they're working through. That will save a lot of time for us and money in going through that process. I put on the sheet, just as an example, some of the local districts that have used it, and what they were able to save just this year going into it. Again, when they first came out and talked to us, it seemed too good to be true. I didn't jump into it, being a bit conservative, to say, I'm not going to throw money out there until this system's been tried and true. With our new accounts payable individual in the district, Andrea Davis, she was at Cortland. She used this and was at the ground level using this program. So she's very adept at working with Educational Data Services, where she knows the individuals there by first name, which I felt very comfortable about, and the fact that we receive quality training, because they will come to the district and do training for all the staff members and the administrators as well prior to this. My recommendation for the cost of $6,900 in year one to do that, I believe our benefit will far outweigh that cost of buying into it. One of the things that you would have seen in the resolution is that there is a lead school district. Educational Data Services cannot serve as a piggybacking service. We have to work with other districts. So we actually sign on to be part of a piggyback on the bids. So when you see the other school district there, it's just saying that we're going to be part of piggyback or cooperative bidding. Prior in the school year, we talked about cooperative bidding, and we did a few resolutions which would fall in line with this for purchasing for the capital project. So it's my recommendation to the board that we move forward with this, put it in place, and for our purchasing for the 23-24 school year. The nice feature of that too, if that you've purchased your items which are in our window from May to September, all shipping is guaranteed from the vendors to be free. The only piece where it's not free is if you're purchasing hazardous materials. I can say that we are not purchasing any great deal of hazardous materials. There are some that we purchase through the chemicals through science. So that'd be the only thing that you have to be shipping on. So it's, again, my recommendation that we jump in, get our feet wet with this. We pilot it for a year. If we feel that we're getting our return back on our investment, that we would continue moving forward with the program.
Do you have an estimate on how much you think we could save? Is it,
At
would
thi-
it fall
at
into
this
these
point-
numbers?
At this point, I don't, because I haven't seen the bids that have come out. And then again, it will depend if we move away from our traditional purchasing areas. I know we have teachers in the audience. I'm sure they'd be overjoyed not to have to keep going through school specialty. So that would be another piece of it. So again, it's going to see where our benefits lie. One of the key pieces that I've seen through districts is that the purchases through athletics. Because number one, it's become very difficult to buy equipment, and the price of equipment is really skyrocketing. Another piece of one of the bids that they do is for refurbishment. So every year, our athletic equipment, helmets and things of that nature go through a great deal of refurbishment. So this would be something, again, that we may realize a savings through. Any other questions?
I did. And it just.
I'll give you a few seconds.
Don't worry about it, I can.
Just email me.
Yeah, we can always answer
What do you
later.
think of it?
So Mike already asked us for additional questions or comments? I gotta get a rhythm, otherwise I lose track of what I'm doing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so I think that brings us to our budget guidelines. So I need a motion to approve the 23-24 budget guidelines.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, now we're on to a field trip request for the environmental club. It has a couple of parts to it here, so I entertain a motion to approve field trip request.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I just would like to know if by being the first one to make
Can
a
you
motion-
go?
Yes, is this one of those,
It won't hurt, I'll tell you
Right?
that, it won't hurt
Okay.
your chances, yeah.
you were the first one up?
That's what they tell you, is when you're the first one to sign up, you have to pay double. So
Yeah.
Oh, like you're a kid.
Never mind. Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it'd be a nice opportunity for the kids.
additional questions or comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so then I think that brings us to personnel. So I'll take a motion to approve personnel as recommended by Superintendent Turk.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
For clarification, the volunteer lists have been vetted by the building principals, administrators, that's correct?
References checked, yeah.
One other question. If we have family on one of the volunteer lists, do we abstain just from that one or all of them?
Either or, ideally we pull it out, right Kelly, it's a cleaner way to do it, pull it out and vote it separate.
So for the volunteers for the, what do we have, Amy, was it junior high or intermediate? Junior high.
separate out
Julia,
Julia.
good meeting that week.
Just separate out volunteers as a whole.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Ah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that is
So-
awesome.
So what we'll do is we'll move personnel minus the volunteers, and then we'll do the volunteers as a whole block separate. Everybody understand what I mean by that?
Yes.
We ready to vote? All right, so all those in favor of personnel report minus the volunteer section?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And now, do I have to read motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Motion for the volunteers? Second. Questions or comments? All right, so all those in favor of the volunteer list?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
All right. I believe that takes us to
I have a
info.
question. Do the staff get a copy of like their, I'm looking at one in particular and I thought it was just very lovely and it said a lot of nice stuff. Do they get to see what people say about them or is that
The
behind your
recommendations.
back?
You mean when someone writes a recommendation for someone else?
Well, there's somebody getting tenure in here, and it's just a very nice, positive feedback. Do they get a piece of paper that says that, or?
We don't
is that for
provide
us?
it for them, but
No?
the
Okay.
person that writes the recommendations obviously has conversations with the person about it, yeah.
I was just curious.
And then we send a
Process.
congratulatory letter from my office,
And that hard copy goes in their personnel folder, which they can look at.
which they can look at, yeah.
Okay.
That takes us to informational items.
Yes, we are there. Fundraising updates, a full host of fundraising updates from the high school, from the FFA, Student Government Environmental Club, class of 2025, and DECA.
Great. And it brings us to community voices. And so Chelsea sign up here, and so just as a reminder to us as a board, we receive, and if there's any questions, please share those with us in writing so that we can respond to them at a later date.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a chance to introduce or reintroduce myself. My name is Chelsea Horak. I do happen to be a graduate of Homework for the class of 2006. I'm currently here as a freelance reporter for the Cortland Voice, and we would just like to hear about any stories from either the community or, the school board about student achievement, any new classes being offered, anything that would be relevant for the community to know. We'd be happy to share that. Teachers winning grants, retiring, any special projects that affect the community, we'd be happy to hear about it. And you could just send that to news@cortlandvoice.com. That'll go right to my editor, and then he'll either have it written up or send it on to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I believe we have no board or district leader.
We have a district committee report,
All right.
ILC, Instructional Leadership.
We
Mr.
had
Governor.
our January iteration of our ILC meeting today. We had 3 agenda items. The first being tasking our grade level leaders and our curricular lead teachers to help Mr. Finn and I look at creating a central list or a thorough list of all of our technology applications that we utilize during instruction. So it could be anything from a website to an application we actually purchase that involves rostering, that has implications for New York State law. And looking at that item pre-K through 12 in every content area. So we're gonna, on Monday, they'll receive the master spreadsheet per se, where the information is gonna be collected. Each of those teacher leaders are gonna work with their departments and their grade levels to come up with a comprehensive list of all the technology applications that are utilized within their grade level. Then Josh and I will have the awesome responsibility to look at all that data and information and to find where there's efficiencies, redundancies of the sort, and make more efficient use of not only our process to request, but also look at what's being used, what grade levels, when, relevancy, that type of stuff. So that's a pretty big lift for us, but it's definitely needed, and it's something that I think will be of value at the end of the process with some recommendations moving forward. The second item was a brief overview of the skeleton of our March 13th Staff Development Day. We're in the planning processes, and we looked at the general structure of work sessions in the AM and department grade level meetings in the PM. And the highlight of that is we had a number of of teachers step forward who are going to be facilitating a session for their colleagues on that particular day. And my hat's off to those teachers who are stepping out of their comfort zone possibly and working with their colleagues to help them perfect some part of their craft, whether it be a technology application or an instructional strategy of some sort that they'd like to share. So we're pretty excited about that day. And then looking at vertical curriculum meetings in the afternoon, as that's a definite need for our district, is for grade levels and grade bands and content areas to look at their curriculum from lower levels to higher levels as opposed to at grade level. So I think the vertical piece that sometimes is overlooked in school districts. And then the third piece was dealt with network leadership meetings through BOCES. Certain content areas like ELA, social studies, science and math, there's early learning, there's an SEL, there's a computer science group. They meet 3 times a year, and districts send representatives, and we just discussed the relevancy of those BOCES meetings, and should we look at doing something in district with our own staff, as opposed to charting people to Syracuse for information that sometimes you can get via an email or the state education website. So we're looking at the merit of that program, and that was our meeting.
Thanks, Jeff.
Then I think we're ready to hear board member activities.
I had a bunch of them, actually. My twins went on the Rocket Lake trip, which was pretty, that was an awesome opportunity for them. We did the class of 2027 with Principal Bennett, and they kind of went over their schedules, so that, I cannot believe that day's already here. And then we had the whole weekend of wrestling here, right? We had the junior high on Thursday, and then boys have Saturday, and then the girls had a tournament Sunday, so it's been pretty crazy. But all really good things.
I went to a girls' basketball game, checked that out, and I did an after-school painting event at the intermediate. And I've been checking out Julie over at the elementary. She's showing up, so.
She taking care of business over there?
She was working when I showed up.
Last chance. All right, upcoming events.
Yes, we have just a couple that I'll highlight for you. We want to remind everybody, we had put some information out to the community, but this Friday afternoon, we'll have a short instructional day. So we published those release times for the community so they know what that will look like. And then on Friday as well, we have our high school Shakespeare competition that had been postponed from a couple of weeks ago. That'll be at 5:30 in the auditorium here at the high school. So you have an opportunity to stop over and see our kids in action in that competition.
I think there's a junior high dance that night too.
I haven't been to one of those in a while.
You're welcome.
I'm convinced I'm busy. I don't know what.
It's semi-formal, so dress up.
So
I'll get back to you on that.
With that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
All right, thank you, everyone.
Never gets one.
I know, I'm not sure that there's another play around.